First, in this Paris Direct, we'll start with this year's winner of the EU's Top Human Rights Award. This year, the Sakharov Prize goes to jailed Georgian journalist and editor Miza Amariobili and Polish-Belarusian journalist Andrzej Pokobut. France 24's Europe editor Armen Georgian is in Strasbourg, where that prize was announced not long ago. Armen, first of all, what more can you tell us about this year's winners?
Well, the European Parliament president was just talking about the prize, saying that these two laureates really symbolize what the EU is all about, which is defending freedom of expression and the fight for democracy, and for the Conference of Presidents, which is the group of basically party leaders in the European Parliament here that decide the final winner. They came to a consensus that this prize, that the character of the prize would be very much upheld and furthered by the award to these two individuals. As you said, Miza Amariobili, a prominent journalist in Georgia who was convicted in August of slapping a police chief, and that was considered to be basically a trumped-up charge that was then brought against her, very similar to what happened to Andrzej Pokobut, the Belarusian journalist who's also correspondent for Gazeta Wyborcza, so a very famous Polish newspaper. He was convicted of, quote, harming Belarusian national security and sentenced to 8 years, which he's serving in a penal colony, not always with access to adequate medical equipment and representation, being held at times in solitary confinement. So a lot of things that these two people have in common, the fact that they're both behind bars right now, which was obviously a very important motivation for MEPs here to give them the prize, because, as I said, it's very much in character with what the prize is all about. And I think, Jeannie, we have to say that although sometimes this prize in the past has been given to some very famous people like Nelson Mandela, Malala Yousafzai, and even Alexei Navalny, I think you could say, is very widely known in Europe, these two names are not so widely known. And that's really the whole point. It's to draw attention to the plight of perhaps lesser-known people who are fighting for these European values as MEPs here see it.
Armen, speaking of drawing attention, can we read any significance into the fact that both of these laureates come from the former Soviet Union?
Well, you know, when it comes to Belarus, the EU has for a long time been at loggerheads with the government of Belarus. People here in the parliament talk about Alexander Lukashenko, the leader, as the EU's last dictator. So in a sense, it's a sort of classic choice to choose a Belarusian that's standing up to human rights. I think with Georgia, it's a slightly different situation, because, of course, Georgia has been an applicant to join the European Union, but since the last election, the new government has been moving in a different direction, and people here, MEPs I've spoken to, have always regretted what they see as Georgia essentially moving away from the European family in the way that it's handling these anti-government protests. So there is kind of a link, but a slightly different dynamic, I think, between Belarus and Georgia. But of course, yes, they are both former Soviet republics, and at a time when the EU is trying to sort of step up to help Ukraine and you know, push back against Russia, it's probably a significant choice in those terms as well.